Hi everyone, today I want to talk about Tmux and terminal multiplexing. But first, if you're new, welcome. Welcome to my channel. I typically produce videos around NeoVim, command line, Kubernetes, cloud native, and all the computing stuff. If you're a subscriber, thank you and welcome back. Let's start. So first of all, the idea behind this presentation is really to show you how powerful terminal multiplexer and specifically Tmux can be, and hopefully inspire you to try it on your own. I will link the configuration in the video description to my features and functions and what I'm using. You can grab it and play with it. But other than that, let's start by short introduction to Tmux and what it really is. So really briefly, Tmux is kind of like, it's a CLI command line tool. It's really more like your terminal superpower. So you already use terminal, whether you use Kitty, Alacrity, Xterm, whatever's your poison, you have your terminal. You can execute scripts, you can execute commands. When you add Tmux to it, it essentially multiplies the capabilities that you can have. And it does it mostly by creating sessions, which is really an abstraction that Tmux provides. And you can think of a session like a workspace. It's an isolated thing that allows you to put whatever kind of commands and works you want, and then you can swap between the sessions and you can do other stuff with it. So I think that's a healthy way of thinking of what Tmux offers. Each session can have one or more windows. So let's see how it can look like. For now, you see we are currently in a Tmux session. Here's a status line at the bottom, and we have one window called slides. So here is how easily we can do another window and another window. So now we have 3 windows. We can start typing stuff here. Let's close those windows. I'll show you the shortcuts later, but behind those shortcuts are typical Tmux commands. Each window can have multiple panes. So let's create a new pane. So let's split horizontally, and we can also split vertically. As you can see, we have 3 panes, and like that we can quickly close them. So you can already see how you can kind of create another pane. Maybe you want to run a long-running command in a pane. Maybe you can have something in a window, and then you can do more advanced stuff with it, which we will get to later. So what are the common use cases other than separating your work into various sessions? One common use case is use Tmux for remote sessions. If you want to SSH into a VM or into a container, into Kubernetes pod, whatever you're doing, you can use Tmux to isolate the specific sessions. Again, coming back to the same principle. You can have various settings for project-specific environments. It requires something additional on top of Tmux, although it's possible to do with Tmux, but you would have to write a custom script. I will show that in a bonus section towards the end of the video. And one interesting use case is pair programming or any kind of troubleshooting, where if you have SSH enabled, you can actually execute a Tmux command and you can let someone else attach or connect to this command. So those are the main use cases, but kind of the main predominant use case is that it gives you the superpower of having multiple sessions that are isolated from each other, and then you can kind of segregate your work in. So what are the basic Tmux commands? So the basic Tmux command is Tmux, as it's a CLI. So if I type Tmux, you can see it says it wants to create a new session, but it says, hey, you already have a Tmux session, you shouldn't really nest it. It's possible to nest it, but there might be some unintended consequences. So we're not going to nest it, but let's create a new Tmux session. So Tmux, let's say new s, and we have here this cool name. Now, if I would type it without the -d, it would tell me again, I cannot do this because we would nest. However, we can create this session in a detached mode. So if I type -d command at the end, you will see that nothing happens. However, if I list the sessions with Tmux ls, you can see that we have this cool name session right here. And we have also others, poke, relax, and this session that we're currently in Tmux setup. So we can attach to a session, but we would have kind of the same problem. So we can use different command if we want to switch to an existing session called Tmux switch client, and then we can target the session, and it's called cool name in our case, cool name, and you can see we switched to this session. I have a special shortcut that takes me back to a previous session. In my case, it's Alt S, but you can have it however you want. I'll share this, as I mentioned earlier, in the video description, so you can grab all my shortcuts if you want. All right, so that's a quick tour how you can operate Tmux itself and various sessions and things and so on. I have it all under my custom shortcuts, so it's now in muscle memory, and I operate my Tmux really efficiently. But when you start, you might want to do the commands, and you want to type them a few times to get used to and familiarize yourself with what it is. So Control B is a default prefix as to how Tmux recognizes that the next command that you're going to type is for Tmux. If you look closely at the left bottom now, when I hit Control B, you can see that it went yellow for a moment, and Tmux is waiting for the next command, because now the key press that I press will be interpreted by Tmux. So if we want to create a new window, we can do C. As you remember earlier, we created a new window. I can swap to previous window. I can swap again to this window. I can create a pane. I can create another pane. So really easily, all those things we can do with Tmux, and here I can close them real quick. We can also detach a session, so Control B and D, and you can see everything is gone. There's no Tmux. We lost our work. Well, thankfully we didn't, because now I can do Tmux attach. So I can do Tmux, and I can do maybe switch client, and we target the session Tmux setup. So let's actually do attach, Tmux setup, and we are back as we were in our session, and all the other sessions are attached as well. So this is really nice, so we don't lose our work. Tmux server will keep all the sessions alive unless you kill the server or you completely kill the session. So that's a very useful mechanism. If you accidentally close your terminal, nothing happens, Tmux will still run. So there's a lot of custom configurations that you can do. I'm going to show you my Tmux file, so don't be scared, because I configured it throughout years and I gathered a lot of configurations, so I know what those things are, but it might look intimidating at the beginning. And you are going to start with a much simpler Tmux file. By the way, tedit is an alias for editing Tmux. I have similar aliases for other important configs as well. So a lot of things happening here, but you don't need to worry. You know, typically those are options. We are setting options. We are setting various statuses and so on. Let's go a little bit down here to keybinds. This is an important part and also self-explanatory. As you've seen earlier, I am splitting a window, you know, doing vertical split, horizontal split, creating new window, and I'm essentially attaching this functionality to various keys. And I have all those key bindings for all kinds of stuff here. And it kind of goes on like that. There's more stuff. You can all read it all, and I will show you some of it later in the presentation. But I just wanted to show you that tmux.conf, typically in your home directory, this is where Tmux stores all its options. All right. So you've seen this status line. I've had a few questions how it's done. This is the ugly code, how it's done. It took me a while to kind of come up with all the colors and everything and icons. I might actually create a plugin out of it. We're going to be talking about plugin manager in a moment. But that's what produces essentially this kind of command line, status line here. You can grab all of it from my config if you want. All right, let's talk a little bit about a little bit different features. So we've seen so far how we can kind of open a new pane, open a new window, close them, and so on. But there's a few more features, 3 to be more specific, that make Tmux really, really nice. let's start by synchronizing panes. So if we switch to this session, you can see we kind of have a really messy situation here. I've opened a few options here, and I kind of created on purpose this mess. So what I would like to do is to clear. So I want to type a clear command, but I have to retype this command in every single pane. So Tmux allows me to synchronize what I type in one pane to all the other panes. So if you can see at the bottom, I click the shortcut, and here I have this little icon which indicates that I am in synchronized mode. So now when I type clear and hit enter, it executed the command in every pane. This is very useful if you open SSH sessions to multiple servers and you want to issue the same command quite nicely. Let's imagine that we want to zoom, as I just did here. I have it in a similar shortcut. So if we open Vim maybe here, and open our Tmux config, but I want to zoom in on this Tmux conf. Another shortcut enables me to zoom into current window, and I have those little eyes here indicating that we are in the zoomed state. So that was the zooming part. Now, how do we move around with different sessions? I have a special script, and I will show this to you how it works. The script code is in my scripts folder in my .files, and I'm using FZF and Tmux together to swap between various sessions. So the way it looks is I am doing this, I am doing Alt and T in my case for Tmux sessions, and then we can simply type, it's FZF, we can type Tmux setup. The sessions with stars are active ones, and we are going to switch back to Tmux. So we've seen how we can synchronize pace and resize. Now let's see how we can use copy. And copy is something not that many people know about, but I find it really useful. If you don't want to use mouse, maybe it's cumbersome or clunky, or you just want to have this mouse-free workflow, copying stuff from the terminal is kind of the last thing to go. But Tmux can help us. So let's say I am listing all the files in the current folder, and I want to copy this intro.sh. So typically I would use my mouse, it's not that hard, of course, and I would just right click and copy. But we can do this also from keyboard. So I can enter the copy mode. This is again a shortcut, and you can see it's indicated by the 0/0 that we are in the copy mode. And here I have really my Vim bindings to my disposal. So how do we search something upwards in Vim? We use question mark. So search up, intro, and hit enter. And we see we found one result, intro. When I want to enter copy mode on my buffer, I can hit space, and you can see we have this kind of little yellow indicator here. And then I can simply put $, which is go from where we are till the end of the word. And to copy something, I hit enter. So it's quite a few keystrokes that are slightly different than in Vim, namely space and enter. You can rebind them, but you can also just learn to use them, and it's going to be okay. So now I have copied the intro.sh into a buffer, and you can see I am pasting it now. So it's very easy to copy the whole information from a buffer. I very often copy things if I run a command and this command gives me output, maybe it was an error. I do this trick with entering copy mode, selecting a whole line. So you can see that I can go like J and K up here, and I can select the whole line right here. And then from there, I can, for example, type maybe to this ls command, and it would select all up towards ls. So very, very kind of nice ways how you can use this copy mode in Vim, in Tmux. All right. There are now certain automation scripts that you can do, and I encourage you to create scripts that essentially automate your Tmux. So this is very simple. What it does, it simply toggles the status line. If I need the whole real estate of my terminal, I can simply go into Control B. Remember, that's the message telling to Tmux that the next keystroke will be for Tmux. Control B and H, and you can see we hide the status line. Control B and H again, toggles it back. That's just an example of a very simple automation, and I use it quite often to hide this line in this way. Now, changing to session path. Session path is an automated Tmux variable. if you open a new session and you open it in a specific directory, that's the session path. And from there you can navigate somewhere else, and then you kind of get lost. What was my session path? So this CDS, so CD to session, can help you. And I want to show you how I create my sessions. We've seen a simple Tmux new session and Tmux attach, but the way I do this most of the time, I am executing this script. This is with Alt X in my case, and then I can simply, maybe I want to create a session from my .files. So I hit .files, enter, and it creates a session with .files. As you can see, it's a new session, new name, and I am currently in this .files session. And then I can go back to my session like this. So change back to my Tmux setup, change back to .files, and then if I navigate, for example, to home, and then I don't remember what was my original session path, I can do CDS, and it takes me back to my session path. Control D kills the session. So we've killed the session with Control D. Control T in my case would show this window, and we can again swap. So you can see you can create this automation around moving around sessions, making it easier and more intuitive to kind of faster swap and change sessions. Another interesting script that also uses Tmux is opening a repository in a new session. So if I open here a new pane and run this repo, maybe I can go to somewhere like YouTube, which is a repository that you can see now. I can zoom it, and you can see it tells us a little bit of information about it. It uses one fetch, shows us which language is predominant, and so on. If I hit enter, it will do very similar to the previous, what the previous one did, but it will also fetch Git repository and so on. So you can kind of again create those scripts, and I use them constantly. Those are fairly ingrained within my workflow. So again, Control D kills the session, and we can use Alt T to switch to our Tmux. One more time. So let's zoom back, close this pane, and let's go. And create Tmux session. We just seen this in action. This is something that I have bound under my Alt X. Right, there are a little bit more advanced features. I'm not going to maybe show them exactly to you because the video would be super long, but this is something really cool that you can do. You can link windows. So if you think about it, that we have this presentation window, and for whatever reason you want to see the same window in a different session, you can link it. And this will be not a new pane or a new window, but it will be a linked window. So whatever you do in this window, you would see in the other session. So quite interesting. You can also reorder and move windows to different sessions. This is if, for example, you open the file in one session and you actually realize, oh no, I want to move it to my other session to keep this kind of, workspaces idea. You can definitely do this with Tmux as well. I'm not using that often, but it's possible. Some things I want to show you here is this moving a pane. So let's imagine that I have a new pane and it's right here, but it takes too much real estate. And my left-hand side, as you can see, is squeezed a little bit. And I want to take this pane and move it to its own window. So let me actually show you maybe pane. This is the pane that we are going to move. I'm not cheating. I'm not going to move a different one. And I can do Control B to go to Tmux and then exclamation mark. And you can see what happened is that this same pane that we just had a moment ago earlier, it's actually now its own window. So we detached it from a pane and it made a window out of it. If we go back to the same window and do Control B again and add, you can see it reattached it back. By default, it reattaches it with a horizontal split. We can very easily change it. Another shortcut, Control B and Alt 1 changes to different view. And we can close it. So as you see, it's really flexible. There's a lot of potential shortcuts that you can use. It requires some learning. There's muscle memory that needs to happen. But if you use those things regularly, after a week or two, you will be flying with this. All right, Tmux is also really, really cool at scripting. So you can send keys to a specific session and a window and a pane from where you are or from a script. So you can imagine that you can create kind of a little script that sets up your session, and then within the session, maybe it opens a program or lists a directory. You know, there's kind of all kinds of things that you can do with it to send keys. So let's see how it works. We can, for example, say Tmux send keys, and I already did this command earlier. So we can say we have a session called poke, and we want to echo there into a pane window 1 and pane default subscribe. So we can do this. Now let's swap to our poke. So I'm using this little FZF poke, and you can see here we should have in this pane somewhere subscribe. So right at the bottom here, subscribe. So you can automate your Tmux session like that with sending keys. You can also run shell commands. This is again useful for automating. You can check my scripts. I'm gonna leave the link in the video description. There's plenty of ideas how you can use it to automate all kinds of things around Tmux. I mentioned earlier we're going to talk briefly about the plugin manager. Tmux has its own plugin manager. It's called TMP, Tmux Plugin Manager, and very similar like NeoVim, you can have plugin and you can use them. I don't use a lot of plugins. One plugin that I tried lately, it's called Resurrect, but otherwise I just use a theme and I have my own kind of custom things that I build rather than plugins. But there's nothing wrong with plugins. There's plenty really cool plugins, and you can create your own. It's just my preference to don't have it. So TPM, Tmux Plugin Manager, is available if you need it. Custom status line, I mentioned it briefly. You have this kind of battery, GPU, and so on. And I'm going to show you how it's done so that you can see. So it tells me that we already have this file open, which is fine. And here I can, what I'm using here is Dracula. That's the theme. And I'm using it by installing it with Tmux Plugin Manager. And you can see that it has this show remote status, show power line, and in plugins it has CPU, GPU, and RAM. So all those things come from the Dracula theme. You can also install it as well. And here is some of my custom configuration with the icons and so on. All right, so that's status line. There's quite a few settings that are important if you use Vim and NeoVim, and if you're watching this channel, then you definitely use NeoVim. You can actually influence the escape time timeout. So how long does it take from hitting escape to entering escape mode? And you can set this in milliseconds in Tmux, and then your Vim or NeoVim will definitely feel a little bit snappier. History limit, the copy mode, which we've seen earlier, works with the buffer. So you essentially can scroll Tmux buffer, and there's a limit of lines in each buffer. I don't remember exactly how big is it, but if you have commands that produce a lot of output, you can actually increase this history limit, so your buffer can be scrolled way up, and you can have more history limit. So that's a quite useful setting. Something a little bit more, I don't want to say esoteric, but maybe advanced, is using Tmux with -L flag for sockets. What it does essentially, at the beginning I mentioned that Tmux, when you start it, it creates a server. So we have one Tmux server, and inside of those Tmux server we have various sessions, and then they nest windows and panes. So you can create a dedicated socket which essentially creates a new Tmux server. This is often useful with SSH, and there are some kind of advanced use cases for it, but I just want you to be aware that it exists if you need to create your own Tmux server. How to start Tmux on boot? I have it since forever, and whenever I start my terminal, it checks for the Tmux variable, and if it's not set, it uses a tool that I will show you in a second, and it starts a dedicated Tmux session for me. You can also do this differently. You can add to this etc rc local Tmux to create a systemd service, but I find this way a little bit easier. You can add it to your Z shell or bash rc, which will check for Tmux variable, and if it's set, then it's fine. If it's not, it will start a new session. So you always are in a Tmux session. How to debug Tmux? You can run Tmux server info. So server info here. You can see that's just, a bunch of stuff here, output from the server. You can also start Tmux with tag v or enable logging for additional debugging options. So there's quite a few things you can do if you have problems with Tmux itself. And finally, a bonus that I promised that we're going to look at, the project that's called Tmuxinator. So you might be wondering, all right, we have all those sessions, like I've created maybe, I've created this pane, I've created that pane, and I made maybe this pane like that, and maybe like this, so it's kind of like, it has its own panes, and maybe this pane will start some kind of program, cut, whatever, cut, and then, actually, this guy is constantly wants to intercept you, but you understand what it means. We can, I removed, accidentally snapped the cache. Whew. Good, I didn't remove my root partition. All right, so once we have all those things, you want to save them somehow. You want to say, I exactly want to open my project again, and I want to have those windows running exactly the way I want them. And for this, you can use a program called Tmuxinator. And this program has a project-specific configurations for how windows and panes look like. So let me show you how this can look like. So let me just close this here, open a separate window. And I have this bound to MS. And after this, you can see I have various sessions. They are all named. So for example, I can maybe create this session AI. So when I hit enter, it opens, as you can see, it opened an AI. There's a new session, and it did a few things. It started the program on the left pane. It started another program, K9S, on the right pane, and here it opened Vim. So the way it all happened, we can actually end this session. We can do Tmux, edit, AI. You can see it's a simple, not Tmux, Tmux for Tmuxinator, edit AI. It is a simple YAML file, and it says this is the name of my session, this is the root of the directory where we start, and here at the bottom, this is windows and panes and what's inside them. So we have two windows essentially, dev and Hackweek, and then we have various things right inside those windows, various programs, and also they can have various layouts. So that's very nice addition. If you have kind of your sessions that you want to arrange in a specific way, Tmuxinator is definitely super useful. All right, let's swap back to our Tmux setup, and let's close this guy. And that's it. So a few references before we wrap up. Definitely use man Tmux and read the documentation, visit Tmux repository. If you can, consider supporting the creators. I really have just a few projects that I really like, and supporting those projects is great. So although that's open source, if you can, that would be amazing. I'm not affiliated with creators of Tmux. I'm just always thinking that this is a right thing to do if possible. You can have this Tmux cheat sheet, and there's various awesome Tmux repositories that can give you additional information. So that's it. We've reached the end. I'm not sure why my picture here didn't show, but otherwise, thank you for sticking till the end. It was quite a long video. I hope now you know how you can use Tmux in your setup, what benefits it brings. And there are also other similar projects. Some terminals come with kind of a window managers like Western, for example, or there are alternative projects like Zelish, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, or Screen. Whatever you pick, I think it brings a lot in terms of workflow and what you can do with it. So I hope you're going to start using Tmux, and please let me know in the comments below what are you using, if anything, and if maybe this video gave you some ideas to go on your own. Other than that, thank you for watching and see you in next video.